Okay. Well, good afternoon, everybody. I am so excited to be here with you all today. We have a wonderful, distinguished panel of guests who are going to talk about resources to address the staffing shortage. The 911 profession has always struggled to attract qualified applicants. In the pre-COVID era, we typically faced staffing shortages of somewhere between 15 and 20%. Post-COVID, with every industry facing difficulty filling positions, this has catapulted our profession into staffing shortages of 30+% based on surveys that IAD and NASDA did earlier this year. Most recently, Carbine partnered with NINA to conduct the Pulse of 911 survey, which found about 82% of those folks that were surveyed reporting that they are understaffed. Now, understand, being understaffed and having a staffing shortage may be two very different things, because understaffing can be understaffing due to many of your staff members being off on various types of leave, medical leave, and others. It could also be the fact that you just don't simply have enough full-time equivalents in the budget to be able to handle the amount of workload that you have. But one way or another, it definitely goes to show that that the 911 profession is suffering, and that we need to find ways to get around those the staffing crisis. That said, we have this wonderful panel of guests who have a lot of different great ideas and have used different tips and tricks, and they are going to provide some of those tips and tricks to you today. Let's get started with some introductions. First off, I'd like to introduce Roxy Van Gundy with Lyon County, Kansas. Roxy, would you say just kind of give a brief introduction of yourself?
Sure. I'm Roxy Van Gundy. As April said, I've worked at 911 in various capacities for 18 years. I am the very proud director of my home center. We're small but mighty. I'm pretty active in NINA, and I'm really appreciative of being here.
Excellent. Thank you. And we're so glad you're here too. Susan Webster, you are with the city of Hartford, Connecticut. Can you introduce yourself?
Yes, ma'am. Of course. Thank you, April. I am Susan Webster. I currently work for the city of Hartford, Connecticut as the director of the Department of Emergency Services and Telecommunications. In my role here in Hartford, I'm responsible for the ECC as well as 4 additional divisions within the department. We are staffed with 45 telecommunicators, 7 supervisors, let me get this right, 14 additional support staff. And although we are the largest and busiest in the state of Connecticut, we definitely pale in comparison to some of those big centers that we have across the country. I've been in emergency services for about 35 years. I began my career in pre-hospital care as a paramedic before moving into communications in about 2006. I'm currently serving as the president of the Connecticut chapter of NINA, and honored to hold the designations of ENP, RPL, and CPE. Yeah, that's just a little bit about me.
Very good. Thank you. And Michael Brewer with JeffCom in the greater Denver area.
That's right. Jefferson County Communications Center Authority, or JeffCom 911. It was a regionalized center that consolidated 8 primary and secondary PSAPs in 2018. So just living through all of the new organizational issues, starting off with low staffing and low morale, really just getting through just when we thought we were getting our footing and really launching as our own organization. Then we experienced COVID and the Great Resignation, like everybody else, and really forced us to get creative in a lot of different areas, both on the administrative side, but also how we utilize technology. The center itself, we have a staff of 160 personnel, 120 ECS, another 18 supervisors, 3 operations managers, some training QA, and certainly technical and HR support staff.
Excellent. Well, thank you all so much for being here and for lending your voice for some of those who really could use some advice. So with all of that, we're going to go ahead and get started. I'm going to start with some questions. This is really just going to be more of a question and answer session, and I really want to make it very conversational. So what are the challenges that each of your ECCs are facing as it relates to staffing and retention? And what do you think is the cause for those challenges? And let's start off. I think we'll just I'll start hand selecting folks. I'm going to start with you, Roxy. We'll go Roxy, Susan, Michael, and then I'll switch it up.
Well, for me, April, it's having a small hiring pool. There's not a lot of people moving to rural America. So it's very difficult to find candidates to fill the positions that we have. Additionally, if you're finding young people who are foregoing schooling to enter the job market, it's hard to find people with clean records. And, so we've had to revisit some of our, requirements and could we loosen up or, add less things to what we need for somebody to get hired on. But it's definitely the actual hiring pool. People are moving to more metropolitan cities in Middle America because there's not the opportunity here. There's not the housing here. And there's just simply not the amenities here. So we're losing a lot of really qualified talent to bigger population bases.
Thank you. And Susan?
So I would say, April, that our staffing has really been evolving, right? It wasn't all of a sudden, it wasn't due to COVID. Over the past 6 years or more, we've had staff retire. They've left for other agencies, whether they were slower paced agencies or whether they were actually paying more than our agency, or simply moving on to different careers, be it firefighter, law enforcement, or a whole nother industry altogether. And one of the problems that we saw was that our hiring process is a minimum of 3 months just to onboard somebody simply. The training process is 9 months. So once we saw that we had that vacancy, I'm giving you my 2 weeks notice, I'm going to be retiring. We're already a full year behind the 8 ball. So we were simply unable to recruit and train new staff fast enough and replace them. In 2020, we were actually suffering from a 50% staffing shortage. 50% of our staff were gone. We mandated 4 12-hour shifts per week. At times, my staff was being held for an additional 4 hours. People were fatigued. They were making mistakes. They were abusing sick time and refusing mandatory holdovers. And we were actually unable to even approve vacation time. We were refusing vacations. Everybody had to work no matter how exhausted they were. And then we didn't even have enough staff to train our new employees. So what we really had to do is take a long, hard look at our training program and our retention in order to stay above water, because as we say every day in our industry, failure just isn't an option. We've got to work through it. But that's how we came to our staffing shortage, is that we just couldn't, replace them and train them as fast as we needed to. And of course, as we move on, I can speak to some of the ways that, we got to the point that we are today. Excellent.
Okay. And Michael?
Well, I'd say when I meet with my counterparts here in the Denver metro area, it's funny hearing one of my peers, Andrew Dameron over in Denver, he would lament that, you remember the good old days before COVID, we used to just steal from each other. And now we're competing with, the local grocery chain. And I think that really speaks to a mismatch in the overall kind of value of this position and how complicated it is to even just hire out of your applicant pool. I think there's, a national average where we're actually only hiring, training, and retaining somewhere between 1.5% and 2% of that original applicant pool. And I know I just ran a process where I received about 780 to 800 applications, and we're hoping to hire 10 to 12 people out of that pool. So I think we're looking at not certainly compensation models, but how do we value this position within the public safety system itself, and look at how important it is that we staff this position appropriately for public safety.
That is an excellent point. Having to reassess how public safety looks at this position. That's very important. And we need to think about that moving forward. So each of you have some really unique insights when it comes to the different ways you have approached these challenges. So let's talk about recruitment. I would like to kind of hear what each of you are doing as far as recruitment is concerned within your ECC. And this time around, we'll start with Susan.
Oh, okay, great. So one of the things that we've been doing as far as recruitment is concerned is we are becoming very actively involved in the job fairs in the community. So we recently participated in one here at Duncan Park, where one of our minor league baseball team plays. It was actually sponsored by the local union. We went in, set up an amazing booth. We had music, we had giveaways. We brought the entire training class with us. We had, I think it was 12 at the time, all dressed alike and ready to recruit. We had 2 large screen monitors displayed. We had one displayed CAD and the other, the Rapid SOS portal. And people were so intrigued, as they typically are with 911 and dispatch, but they loved what we had to offer and they loved who we were. And if you looked around to the other booths throughout the entire area at the stadium, people were just coming over to us and asking us questions. And as a matter of fact, one of our trainees, I think by accident, walked up to the governor and asked him if he wanted to be a dispatcher in Hartford. Then we made a joke out of it, and of course he didn't apply, but he might be available in a couple more years when he doesn't run. But we ended up receiving over 60 applicants from a 4-hour job fair, and several of them are currently in the pre-employment process. So we're super, super excited about that. And for the trainees, if they put their name on that application, they will be eligible for a $250 bonus for getting those people to sign on. And we're also offering sign-on bonuses for the applicants up to $2,000, depending on the position that they apply for and any certifications that they might already have prior to applying for the job. So yeah, getting involved in those job fairs, I think is great to do. It's a little bit time consuming, but we had fun. They fed everybody, and we got some applications out of it.
I like the idea of rewarding your staff when they have recruited somebody. That's a really great idea. Yeah, I like that. So, okay, it's Michael's turn. What is it that JeffCom's doing?
Well, certainly we started off with referral bonuses and sign-on bonuses and kind of all the traditional things like participating in the county job fairs through the Department of Labor, any way that we could engage. But our staffing got so bad, we didn't even have the staffing to go recruit. That's how bad it was. So we had to really look at what could we do and how could we leverage technology, really sense the environment around us. And through discussions with some very proactive centers that started at the beginning of COVID, call taking from home, and really sensing the workforce environment and really this interest in remote capability, we tried to leverage that. So one of the first things that we implemented was a remote call taking kit, work through the technology and work through the bugs. And then we created a non-emergency position. So our county, because we have 24 agencies that we dispatch for, we don't have like a true 311 phone number for our jurisdiction. So we take in a lot of non-emergency phone calls in our center that require public safety responses, but are not emergency 911 phone calls. So that accounted for about 80% of our daily call volume. So we really took it from a perspective of how could we attack that, start there. And so we created a non-emergency call taking position and offered a remote capability that they would be able to do that with checks and balances in place, of course. And we, even though it was at a lower pay scale than our emergency communication specialist, we received twice the amount of applications for that position. And here's the beauty of it, though. Once we got them in the door, exactly 50% of the people we hired for that position, they see the 911 business going on, and they say, no, I actually want to do that. Even though throughout the entire hiring process, we said, we got this other job, it pays more, but for whatever reason, or shift work, or just kind of fear of getting engaged at that level, they just didn't see themselves in that role until they see themselves in the role. And it's been very successful for us in that regard.
Excellent. That's very interesting that 50% of those folks move into the higher level paying job and come into the center.
Right.
That's exciting. I think that may be a really great idea, great tool to use.
And
How
one
about,
more point on that.
yeah.
Once they're here, I can't even get them to work it from home now. Now my problem
Oh, that's
is
awesome.
I'm running out of places to put people because this is where the action is. This is where their support systems are. And so we're actually not even utilizing our remote capability to its full capacity.
That's very cool. How about you, Roxy?
Well, we have to think on a smaller scale. We don't have retention bonus money. We don't have, hiring bonus money. So we have to think a little smaller scale. I have to get out and pound the pavement. So if I want our name and our face and our vision for our center to be out there, I have to go out there and talk to people about it. Just this morning when I went to go get my Red Bull for the morning, I talked to the convenience store lady about it. Like, have you ever thought about 911? You should reach out to us. We'd love to have you. Just get out there and notice people and how they're interacting with customers and how they're doing with multitasking. I love to say that in rural America, you will never find somebody better at multitasking than your local Dollar General lady. They are incredible folks. And a lot of times they don't consider 911. People don't think that they could actually do this job. And I love to tell them, hey, I'm a small town girl from 900 people and I do this job. Anybody can do it. I also like to get out in the community chat social media pages where everybody talks about everybody and who has a loose dog. And I like to get in there and say, hey, it's your local 911 lady. Here's what we've been doing this month. Or answer questions or say, hey, if you're looking for a job, I know a 911 center who could really use some people. So they know that I'm out there and I'm trying to interact with them on social media. And the other thing that we've done that has been really awesome for our employees, but also a great way to kind of catch people early, is we've gotten into our high school in their local pathways program. So they were doing a pathway on law enforcement. And I was like, oh, excuse me, we're a part of that too. So now they've developed some coursework around 911. They come and do sit-alongs. So we're catching these folks at 17 and 18, right, as they're considering what they're going to do, and showing how we could be a viable option. So that's not only been really fun for us in the center, but really fun to be able to connect with, some of our youth and show that, we want you to come into our center and we want to have a great career path for you. So that's what we've been doing.
Excellent. Well, and the great thing is hearing the differences between everybody. You have to do what's right for your local area, right? 911 is a local entity. So finding the right niche for your area is very, very important. And I love the fact that each of you have been able to give us different ideas. It's fantastic. So let's talk about training. What exactly are you doing in the area of, obviously we talked about recruitment. Now it's bringing hiring, right? Hiring and in the training piece. Roxy, we'll start with you.
I think sitting down with our trainers and realizing that just because we were trained in phase 1, phase 2, and we did call taking last and typing first, that doesn't mean that everyone learns that way. So we've really tried to take our existing training program and tailor it to fit our trainees. Is somebody needing to work on their typing skills? Maybe that's something we start with first so we can start building on that. Do we have somebody who maybe lacks a little confidence? Maybe we work on call taking and, gaining some of that confidence. Just because it's on paper that phase 1 is X, Y, and Z and phase 2 is X, Y, and Z, that doesn't mean that we can't meet people where they are. We've tried really hard also to, train our trainers in, learning concepts and helping them understand how adult learners learn best. There's a lot of great free content out there that you can put your people in and help them understand how to grow. And just really investing in what our trainers are putting into our new folks. But mostly we've really just tried to meet folks where they are and help them succeed. We're here to build that foundation for your successful career. And so that's really the approach we've tried to take, because we weren't trained that way. So, I want it to be a good experience for our new people.
Yeah, there's that that give and take of how long should it take somebody to get through a training program,
Right.
and we've all wanted to like push it through because we're in the staffing shortage. We need to get them out the door and be able to do the job faster. But sometimes it is getting to the person and training to their needs, and that may take a little bit longer, but on the other end you'll end up keeping them. So that's a good point.
And we've started to take the approach that we don't put time limits on it. As long as you're progressing and we see that progression, then we're going to keep trying. And if that's 8 months, or if that's a year, or if that's a year and a half, we're going to keep working with you. It's just a matter of progressing. I know folks, have a 6-month or 8-month time frame on it, and I totally get that. But here it seemed to work better if we just let them go at their own pace and see how they can fly.
Excellent. Well, thank you. Okay, Susan, your turn.
So I think the training piece is kind of twofold. Because we have our staff that's already working in the communication center that needs that continuing education. They need to get that recertification for your NCIC, for your EMD, for anything else that you need recertification in. So we ended up subscribing to a lot of different online programs because I couldn't just take them off the floor and say, okay, here, go to this 8-hour training, because I have nobody to backfill. So we did a lot of that where you would just pull somebody off their regular shift for an hour and play a little bit of a chess game and maneuver them during the slower periods of time. The overnight shift, of course, had lots of training, but the days and evenings, were lacking. So we worked through that with a lot of the online training. But as far as our new employee training goes, about 1.5 years ago, we did a complete overhaul of our training program. And we had to do this because I had nobody on the floor that could train. So in lieu of hiring 2 or 4 dispatchers at any given time, which is what we had previously done, and we knew that that's why we were so far behind in where we were, we introduced a full training academy. So our first training academy consisted of 16 dispatchers and 1 supervisor. And they went through a full-blown training academy. They didn't hit the floor until they were absolutely ready to be able to pick up a 911 call with little supervision or minimal supervision. And we accomplished that with this intense classroom training program. And we were finding that having a bigger classroom presence and then bringing them onto the dispatch floor, they were much, much more prepared to pick up that phone and know what they needed to do and how to answer questions. So that was really the big thing that we did here, is just we knew we had to redo that training program and prepare people a little bit better for their roles as either a call taker or a dispatcher.
Susan, I won't be surprised if you get people reaching out to you saying, okay, I want your curriculum. So that's a fantastic idea, but be prepared to share, because I'm pretty sure they're going to want to have that. So thank you. Michael, how about you?
Well, I think it's a balance kind of what both Roxy and Sue said. One, I think one of the lessons learned out of the COVID experience is it gave opportunity to kind of re-envision what your training program should look like. Because we're forced to, we couldn't be as rigid as before, and really had to take into account new models where we take in input from the candidates. What is going to make them most successful? versus just a system that they can either sink or swim in. And so through that kind of improved conversation between the program itself, the people that run the program, and then to input from the students, from adult learners, on how can we adjust. And so if you say, what is your curriculum? I would love to see your curriculum. Well, it's going to change almost academy to academy, and it has grown from I think what initially was somewhere between 4 and 5 weeks when we first initiated JeffCom. And now we're doing really 8 weeks, where it's 7 weeks kind of classroom synthetic training, really making sure that they're prepared to go out to the operations floor. And then we've even created a bridge week between kind of synthetic classroom training to the floor, where they're listening to live calls or participating. There's more instruction, like 2-on-1, and just really kind of created this bridge before they go on to their CTO training, where it's 1-on-1, practical training, taking those live calls.
You guys are giving some really great ideas. So I'm just curious, as you have moved your training, adjusted your training programs, are you finding that you're having much better retention rates during your training? And any one of you can answer.
I can speak. We still have a relatively low, I'm going to say 60% rate of folks that make it through the training program, if not maybe a little bit lower than that. However, my bigger concern is that once they're done with the training program, they've proven themselves. We've put all those dollars and cents into them, and we know that they can do their job, is then taking care of them and retaining those people. As much as we want to retain the folks that go into the training class, some of them just simply can't do it, whether it's because from a mental health perspective, they just can't function. They can't listen to those 911 calls. They can't take on the responsibility of being that one person who can, make or break somebody's day that's out in the field. But we want to make sure that we're able to keep those people that have proven themselves to do their job. They've made it through what we have as a 9-month probationary period. And then after that, I need to make sure that I'm doing my job to keep them in the center and enjoying their job and feeling worthy to be there.
Excellent. And I see that both Michael and Roxy are nodding their heads, so I won't expect you to answer that. But that's a great segue into retention. So what is it that you're doing? Because that is, we all know that is extremely important, is retaining the folks that we actually have in the seats today. We've oftentimes spent so much time focused in on getting new hires in and getting them trained that we oftentimes forget about the people that do the job every single day. So what exactly are you all doing to retain those that you currently have? And we'll start with Michael this time.
I'll say, we're probably on a national average, just with everybody else, where we were probably losing on average about 2 people a month. And again, it was for a lot of reasons. As a new center, just kind of going through organizational change, the COVID experience. In COVID in 2020, we were doing great with our hiring because we were the only people hiring. And then in 2021, when people decided they didn't need to work anymore, or when the rest of the world opened back up and started hiring, and then people were, I think, again, a lot of it came back to compensation. We're like, well, I could make the same amount of money working for a chiropractor, answering phones, versus, shift work, nights, weekends, holidays, all of those things. And so of my entire hiring class of 2020, I only have retained five outstanding individuals, but that created almost like a lost generation. But always looking for the positive side. What that did is offer opportunity for a culture shift. And so in the last 12 months, we've hired 57 people in the last 12 months, retained 50 of them through training. I currently have 6 of those 50 that are in their last 4 weeks of training, or so, 4 to 6 weeks of their call taking training. Of course, we all know that's almost like fool's gold, right? You get them through call taking, you get them in a burn in, and then about another 4 to 6 months, depending on the individual, then you move to a radio to learn a radio channel for another, 4 or 5 months. And then that's, base qualification. And then it takes experience and really 2 years before someone's really qualified to take on the challenges of the day-to-day job. So it's an opportunity for bringing all those people in and just resetting expectations as an organization. We certainly have sought outside help. We've contracted with Adam Tim and the Healthy Dispatcher to come in and do a study and provide us, feedback on what should we be doing better. But we're always looking to get better across the board. But really, I think one of the things that we have focused on is the personal engagement and really always focusing on providing the why and being fair and transparent and all of those great leadership things that everybody's trying to do.
Excellent. Okay, Roxy, how about you?
I think as far as retention goes, I try to come from a place of seeking to understand. So we have gone from paramilitary dispatch was the problem to help me understand how you got to this decision. I think also just making it an intentional point to connect with them on a frequent basis, not as employees, but as people. I know who their kids are. I sort of have a good understanding of what, is going on outside of each of their lives. And I try to ask about that and be engaged with them as people. I also have really worked hard to try to create avenues for their interests. If they're interested in social media, then get on our social media. If they're interested in, morale building and having parties and doing those types of things, then you would be perfect for our morale committee or technology. Help me. I am just dangerous enough with technology. If you're into that, help me. So just helping them find avenues, because in a small center, getting to the next level is not always easy here. You can't really promote very well in a small center. So giving them ways that they feel like they're leaders in their areas is really important. And I think another thing that I really feel passionate about is that they be educated. So I want to give them opportunities to go out into the world and learn about 911. I never, ever got to go to a national conference until I was a director, and that shouldn't be. So I want to give them the opportunity to network and to understand what 911 is like outside of our silo. And I think that's really, really important in retaining them. Sometimes I bug them about why they need to get their EMP or get their RPL or, do those things, but it comes from a place of love. So I hope that they know that I care about them, and I hope I show them that I care about them every day. That's how I think I can retain people, because they know that they're in a workplace that they're cared about and they're loved.
Like that. I think that's very important. Susan, how about you?
It's always an interesting question. So we all chose public safety, right? And I don't think any of us got into public safety knowing that, I'm going to get into this field because I'm going to make a lot of money. We got into this field because we know how much we love our jobs. And the longer we're in this job, the more we love it, which is why we stay here. However, as managers and directors, we need to ensure that our staff are receiving the wage, at least at a minimum or equal to the area in which we are in. And in my case, the state of Connecticut. So what I had done was I conducted a salary study. I reached out to all the ECCs across the state of Connecticut, and I wanted to determine where we stood in relation to other municipalities, to include some of the regional centers that we have in Connecticut, and specifically focusing on our immediate surrounding towns and municipalities of similar size. And those, of course, that provide the same level of service that we do, which is police, fire, and EMS dispatch. And what I found was that our dispatchers were in the bottom 25% of those that responded. So we're the largest center in the state. We're the busiest center in the state, yet we are significantly underpaid. And that was a huge problem for me. We have an outstanding mayor here in Hartford. So I was able to take my study and my concerns to him and the union as well. Excuse me. And I proposed a salary that would increase them in their rate of pay, which ultimately was approved. And most of our dispatchers actually averaged about a $10,000 a year increase, not to include overtime and not to include shift differential. So it was huge, and it got us up to the top 25%, and it made us competitive with the surrounding municipalities, because I would take somebody in here into Hartford and I would train them, we would coach them, we would mentor them, we would get them comfortable with the environment, and next thing I'd know, they would leave for a higher paying job at a surrounding municipality that was slower. And it was very, very difficult for us. And people outside of public safety didn't want to come into a low paying public safety job when you have to work nights, weekends, holidays, family reunions, birthdays, and it made it very difficult for us. So this was a huge change for us. And then I was also start to see that the applicants that we had applying for the positions were more highly qualified and actually had public safety experience. And in that same proposal is where we got the an annual retention bonus of $2,000 a year. And we got the sign-on bonuses and the referral bonuses. So that was big for us.
Very cool. Roxy, you wanted to step in. Go ahead.
I do, because she brought up a great point, but I think something too that builds retention and builds that connection with your staff is that they see you constantly going out there and saying, we need to fix the pay. So Susan saw a problem, she built up her, research, she brought it to the mayor. And even if the mayor would have said, nope, Susan, sorry, great research, good point, but I don't have the cash, that still means something, so people out there who are like, oh, I don't live in Hartford, Connecticut, or I don't live in the Denver metro, or I don't live somewhere that has money, go ask anyway. All they can say is no. And I tell you, that means something to your staff, that you were willing to go and try to fix it. And not just with pay, we had an EAP program that was not great. So I went to our powers that be and said, do you realize that 911 dispatchers have traumas that happen at 3 o'clock in the morning, and we don't have time or the capacity to wait until the next day to see a provider, so we've got a new EAP program. It's just going and asking and going and trying, and, taking the fact that Susan went to her mayor and asked for pay, but knowing that if pay jumps again, or, there's a need again, Susan's going to go back to the mayor and say, Mayor, I don't think we've done quite enough. That retains people too, because they're going to say, you know what, Susan and Roxy and Mike, they fight for us, and fighting for your people. I mean, that's how you keep them. You can pay them all you want, but if they know that they work for somebody who fights for them, that's big.
Excellent. That is so very true. So very true. I think staff needs to know that you buy into them. And in turn, they then buy into your organization. So this is the final question, because this has been a great conversation, but we're kind of getting a little tight on time. Last question I have is, how are you leveraging the latest technologies to help streamline operations? And I'm going to start with Michael.
About halfway through 2021, we leaned into technology really heavy, because we kind of saw the writing on the wall with the staffing crisis oncoming and that we were experiencing. And we didn't lean into technology for technology's sake. It really comes back to the culture. And we really started the death spiral starting to occur, or also what I call the root of all evil, which is really to make up for that staffing gap. Our supervisors were being deployed on channel 90% plus of their time plus overtime. People on radios working 16-hour shifts. The call takers are taking back-to-back calls for 10 straight hours, soul sucking, which is one of the weirdest dynamics, because they're talking to people all day long, but they're completely isolated. They're so exhausted by then their shift. Last thing they want to do is talk with the person next to them. They just want to go home. And so how did we get ahead of that? And we leaned into technology. We initiated an artificial intelligence call answering program to handle, again, the non-emergency phone calls, and which is about 80% of our daily call volume. And so we were looking for, a multi-pronged approach. We're also leveraging the remote call taking kits for recruiting, but also what could we do immediately to offload some of this call volume? And today, we've been very successful at that implementation of that program, where we went 20 straight months of not achieving our 911 answering call times metrics because of all the volume that the non-emergency call taking was taking up the capacity. And so within 1 month of initiating the artificial intelligence call taking on our non-emergency calls, we started meeting our 911 metrics, because we're able to focus and really utilize the skills and all that training you put into your people, allow them to self-actualize. And day one of turning this on, I go out to the floor and I ask one of our call takers, I was like, how is it working? And she turns around, she's like, Mike, I can finally breathe between phone calls. And, when you're talking about turning around a culture of that was really getting into a real negative place to a place where now they have an opportunity to have a brief conversation, to engage, team build, and just not be completely exhausted at the end of their day, there is no way to quantify the value of that.
I completely agree. That is quite a testament to maybe utilizing some various different types of technology, just to have a breath. So thank you. So Susan, questions to you. We're getting really tight on time, so I've got about 3 minutes left. So
I'll talk fast so Roxy has some time. We knew that Mike was going to be the person that was going to show us some innovations in technology, and I'm going back old school. So only 35% of the incoming calls into our communication center are actually 911 calls. 15% are emergency calls, obviously, that come in on 10-digit lines, alarms, etc. But the remaining 50% of those calls are non-emergency calls. They're looking for booking. They're looking for the records division. They're looking for an internal affairs, a chiefs complex. So to reduce the number of non-emergency calls that come into our ECC, because we know that E stands for emergency, not, was my uncle arrested last night? We've chosen to activate our automated attendant. Now, it was purchased with our phone system many years ago, but we just chose not to use it because we wanted that personal touch. Of course, callers will always have the ability to press 1 and be directed back to the ECC. But we're just going through this process, but I do anticipate a significant reduction in those non-emergency routine calls that we just don't need to deal with in the ECC, but can always be routed back to us, of course. So maybe not really new technology. It's actually old technology, but that we're going to start to utilize. Also a big advocate of ASAP to the PSAP, the automated secure alarm protocol. Can't do that here in Connecticut. We struggle to gain approval to pass data through the state secure network, but it might be an option for other states. So just something that we're doing here in Hartford to hope reduce the number of incoming non-emergency calls.
Excellent. Okay, Roxy, you've got about a minute.
I have caviar taste on a Pizza Hut budget. So, I do what I can. If there are technologies that we can take advantage of for low cost or are offered free through our state, we have a very innovative NG911 program in our state. I'm going to be the first one to volunteer. But, I would encourage vendors to look for solutions for little and small centers to take part in your technology too, because there's a lot of us who would want to get on board. We just can't afford it. So
excellent. Well, thank you all so very much. This panel could go on all day long. We've got a lot we could talk about and a lot more in depth we could go into. But I want to thank you so much for you providing us with the insights that you have. And I need to ask that all attendees make sure you complete the quick survey to share your feedback. Thank you so much for joining us. Have a great day.